Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today we're going to consider the situation of the church in Egypt, a country struggling to find its feet following a series of political upheavals in which, following the popular overthrow of the Mubarak regime, post-revolutionary politics became polarized between the ascendant Muslim Brotherhood on the one hand and liberal and secular forces on the other. The result was the ousting of the Morsi government by the military 1 year later, to the welcome of the majority of Egyptian society, though Islamic extremists vented their anger on those perceived in the overthrow, including moderate Muslims and Christians. To tell us more about the situation today in Egypt, it is my privilege to welcome His Excellency Botros Hanna, the Bishop of the Coptic Catholic Eparchy in Minya, some 250 kilometers south of Cairo. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you.
Christians make up 10 to 15% of the population, and Coptic Catholics make up even less. I think you're only some 200,000 in the population, which means the majority of your contact would not just necessarily be with the Coptic Catholics, but with the Muslim community. How are you bishop to the Muslims? How do you lead, if you will, the Muslim community also on their way to faith, on their way to God? As a witness, how do you do this?
I think it's very important to open a way of dialogue, to accept one another, and to deal one with other, and to discuss our life, our problems, our hopes together. We have the dialogue of the neighborhood, to be together in the society. We have the same problems, we have the same hope, we have the same opportunity. So we can share everything together, and every one of us has the proper idea and principles. So if we confront one of the other, we can find the way to
work or to solve the problem. In fact, the church is very involved precisely in social activities, with not only the churches, but also the construction of schools and health centers and social services and the students would be 90%, for example, coming to the schools. 90% of the population would be Muslims.
Yes, sure.
How does it work in the schools? How do you respect the difference between the different communities in, for example, a Christian school or a Catholic school?
We have 7 schools and a lot of medical center in the villages. I think the education, to educate pupils on to be honest, to be right, to be helpful, to be cooperator, to be a human being like what we want to be.
And what God is calling us to be.
Yes, sure. So in this way, we help pupils to take something together. For example, we have a class of the meditation of life and cooperation in the life. We take some subjects and to invite pupils to discuss about this as young people, as young pupils, to know the other, to accept the other, to agree with something of the other, and to accept the different one.
Yes,
it's a way to appreciate one another.
Now, this question has been very, very important recently, especially in Egypt's history, because of all of the political upheavals in the society. We have had the overthrow of the Mubarak regime, we've had the installation of the Morsi government and the Muslim Brotherhood, and then the will of the people through ousted, if you will, the Morsi government, and now we are in this new time, if you will. How important do you think, for example, the Christian presence and the schools and this desire of living together has helped the relationships between not the extremist, but the moderate Muslim community and the Christian community to live and to work together for this new society that Egypt is trying to build?
We are fortunate to have the Azhar University and the Association of as a highest authority of Islam, Sunni Islam.
So it's just to be clear, the Al-Azhar University is Islamic university, Sunni
Yes.
Islamic, and it is the highest religious authority in the land. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And all Azharites, brother and teachers, are moderate. In fact, we note at the last time when the revolution of 30 of June, many of moderate Muslims defense the church and the Christian.
Christians and Muslims were standing with arms in arm
Yes.
in a line defending
the churches
the
and
churches.
Christian institution. So it's a good thing. But on the other side, we have the integralists and the
extremists.
Extremists and the fanatists who was very aggressive against Christian, against the church, against the government, against the police, against...
I understand that in the violence that occurred after the overthrow of the Morsi government, over 1,000 people were killed and over 80 churches were attacked and
Yes.
burned.
Yes.
Was also in your diocese, did you also suffer attack and violence?
Yeah, sure. It was in all over Egypt. The violence explodes in all over the Egypt. In my diocese of Minya, we have 7 places, 1 church, 3 schools, and 2 pastoral center, 2 houses of priests, and so on. So,
were you afraid when this violence exploded and this? Because, if I understand correctly, the first target were the buildings, but then the next threat was that priests and bishops and Christians would be killed.
yes.
Were you also afraid for your life?
For my own life, I am not afraid, because I don't know why, but I feel secure in myself, in my God, in my faith. I have to be secure, to be calm, because of my people, because they look
to you
on me, like in the Bible said, if the head falls, the sheep
will go.
So, and I pray for all the society, the peace in all the society, between Muslims and Christian, and between Muslims and Muslims, Christian and Christians. It's the culture of peace we need to cultivate.
Your Excellency, we're going to take a break, and we're going to watch now a short report on the situation of Christians in Egypt.
Egypt is not only pyramids and sun-soaked beaches. It is also a country where the economic and political interests of the world's great powers intertwine. The Arab Spring's popular uprising in Cairo's Tahrir Square in January of 2011 has resulted in the country stumbling towards an uncertain future, ever more polarized between Islamist and secular forces. The Arab Republic of Egypt is the most populated country in the Middle East, with around 84 million inhabitants, of which 89% are Muslims and 11% are Coptic Christians. The population is highly urbanized, concentrating around the Nile River and Delta and near the Suez Canal. "60% of Egypt's inhabitants are fellahin, or farmers, who lead humble lives in simple mud brick houses. Egypt's strategic position gives it control over the Suez Canal, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. 1/10 of the world's oil supply passes along this waterway each year. The Egyptian economy, in addition to revenue from the Suez Canal, petroleum and agriculture, depends largely on tourism. Every year, up to 10 million people visit the rich historic sites and beach resorts. However, the recent years of internal turmoil have considerably hindered growth, resulting in increasing unemployment, inflation, and economic loss. The roots of Egypt's civilization stretch back over 4 millennia before Christ. The land has seen the rule of pharaonic dynasties, Macedonian kings, Roman Caesars, and Byzantine emperors. The Arab conquest of the 7th century introduced Egypt to Islam, a culture to which it belongs to the present day. In 1882, the British Empire occupied the region. Egypt gained independence in 1922, when Fahd I declared himself king. However, it was not until 1953 that a republic was declared. Egypt remained in turmoil in the second half of the 20th century, with conflicts revolving around the Suez Canal and Israel's position in the Middle East. In 1981, during the annual Victory Parade, radical Muslim extremists from Al-Jihad, a Muslim Brotherhood splinter group, assassinated Egypt's president, Anwar Sadat. He was succeeded by Vice President Hosni Mubarak, who immediately introduced martial law that remained in force until 2011, when Mubarak's 30-year rule ended with the onset of the Arab Spring. The Muslim Brotherhood, opposed to secularizing tendencies and keen to introduce Sharia law, took over the reins of state. Christianity arrived in Egypt together with Mark the Evangelist in the 1st century. Soon after, Christian monasticism was born. By the end of the 5th century, hundreds of monasteries and thousands of cells and caves adorned the Egyptian desert. Copts, descendants of an ancient people who inhabited the Nile Valley well before the Arab conquest, were, and to this day remain, Christian. Orthodox, Catholic and Protestant Copts are united by their devotion to Christ from a very early age when a cross is tattooed on their wrist or shoulder, a distinct and enduring sign of their faith. Copts have been systematically persecuted since the Arab conquest. Over the years, some converted to Islam in order to survive. Those who refused to repudiate their faith became second-class citizens. The appearance of fundamentalist Islam in the 1970s led to successive waves of outright persecution. In 1971, a clause was added to the constitution. Islam is the state religion, Arabic the official language, and Islamic Sharia the main source of its laws. Between 1981 and the present, attacks on Copts have led to the death of thousands and the destruction of hundreds of homes, churches, and shops. The coming years presage a difficult period for Egypt's Christians. Unable to find work or to cultivate fields, witness to an increasingly dominant Islamic presence, with the construction of new mosques every month, while the building of new churches is practically impossible, many Christians search for freedom abroad. Estimates put the number of Christians who have left Egypt since the downfall of Mubarak's regime at around 200,000.
Muslims, the Salafists, they think that only Islam should be in Egypt. All Christians must go away. And they asked us, go to Canada, to America, you have all visa. And we told them, no, it is our country, we are staying here because we have a mission to make peace and dialogue with the others and accept the others. And we try to do it.
Egypt's Christians, our suffering brothers and sisters, not only need our sympathy, but our help, concrete help. We have to think about them often, pray for them, but also support them financially.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great privilege to be here again today with His Excellency Bishop Botros Hanna, the Bishop of the Minya Diocese, the Coptic Catholic Diocese in Egypt. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here again in our program.
Thank you again.
We've been talking about the situation of Christians following the violence, your own role as a shepherd, and the need to keep peace. Now, there were some churches, for example, one Orthodox church had put a big banner after, and this church had been attacked and burned, and put a big banner saying, "We forgive." What has been the reaction of the Christians to the violence that occurred in Egypt after the fall of the Morsi government?
That is not a problem between Christian and Muslim. It's not a religious war.
It's not a religious war.
It's not a religious war. It is conflict between extremism and Egyptian people. It is the extremists want to glass the country, the people, to go on the way of conflict between the two parts, Christian and Muslims in Egypt. But we note confusion, as they want to confuse the situation, and to give an image, different image at the exterior. So always when one church was attacked, Christian was aggressive and talk and shout. It's not possible. We don't agree. This time, no. They was more calm and with a very sense of respect, because we know that the brother Muslims lost the authority, the power. So they was...
it's not their fault in this case. The moderate Muslims are not to blame.
Yes.
It is the problem to place the problem where it is, where it belongs, and that is on extremism.
And we respect what happens, and we offer our suffer to God in favor of all of Egypt.
All of Egypt.
All of Egypt.
Do you think what has happened, the fact that there has not been more violence, is in some way a miracle?
Yes, I think, because no one can imagine before that in 1 year this regime can fall down. So we think this regime failed in many sectors of the life, because in everything, when they decide something and they say to do something, it was maybe against all of Egypt. So people can't wait for 4 years as they want to be on the throne, the authority.
Now, we've talked a little bit about the question of the violence coming from the extremists, but also, of course, the anger towards the Muslim Brotherhood. And my question is it possible for reconciliation now? I mean, you've been talking about reconciliation between Christians and the moderate Muslims, but is there an anger towards the Muslim Brotherhood? And is there a possibility of reconciliation with the Muslim Brotherhood?
We Christians are able, and I think it's possible, to reconcile everyone in Egypt who use violence as a method, as a principle, who kill someone, because we have to respect the law, we have to respect the life of human being. So who go against human being, who go against the society, they have to be under the law, to be under the judgment of the law of the constitution.
Yes, so that the law plays its role.
Yes, but the normal people who haven't sense, who haven't
acted in violence, for
yes,
example.
They welcome always in the dialogue, in the reconciliation, because they are our friends, our brother in the society. So it's possible to reconcile all of Egypt.
Are you hopeful for the future? The society is now in a great change. There's a great transition, and the Muslims and the Christians are working together, for example, for a new constitution, where even, if I understand correctly, where the question of Sharia law is being reconsidered, whether Sharia law has a place in the constitution. Are you hopeful for all of these changes? And at the same time, what are your fears in this new time of transition?
I think the future will be more better than the past. So we confide in God will.
You confide in God.
We confide in God, in His good willing. And we trust in many persons in Egypt who wants the better of the society, of the country.
And your fears?
The way of think and confuse religion and political, it influence a lot of people, because we have a very high percentual number of ignorance in Egypt.
People who are illiterate, they have not able to read, for example.
Yes, more than 40% of the society
cannot read
and write, and the poor, the poverty, because we have more than 26% of the population are poor.
26%?
26%
are poor, are below poverty line.
Yes. So in this situation, like what happened before, more of extremists went to pay the vote of person and to influence an actual situation before the revolution. They convince the person that is a war against the Islam. It's not against the one regime, a political regime.
Okay.
So people go on because they have a very high sensibility for the religious sense.
So the poverty and the ignorance of the people has been manipulated, as you said.
Yes.
They were paid to vote, for example, for the Muslim Brotherhoods and the Islam and the Morsi government at that time. And the fear is that this could happen again.
But now the people discover that was a manipulation. It was something wrong.
So they're a bit more aware. Your Excellency, what can we do from the Universal Church? What is it that we can do for Egypt? Not only perhaps our prayers, but in concrete action. Is there something that we can do?
Yes. I think it's important to be consolidate together and to help the society in realizing something in the education center, dialogue center in in many cities and many villages, and to help the law to make one human law, one law very just, very.
In this question of the constitution, or just generally the law of the
constitution and the law, because we have a lot of law who haven't sense, and if we are able to be in dialogue with all the Christian, all the churches, we can help one another in the situation, how to deal with certain mentality with society.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program. And if you'd like to know more about the situation, the story of Catholics in Egypt, and perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.